Hello. For this meditation, we are going to be looking at our next Psalm of Ascent, which is Psalm 125. Please, pray this along with me. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken but endures forever. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people, both now and forevermore. The scepter of the wicked will not remain over the land allotted to the righteous, for then the righteous might use their hands to do evil. Lord, do good to those who are good, to those who are upright in heart. But those who turn to crooked ways, the Lord will banish with the evildoers. Peace be on Israel. Friends, the road of faith, climbing for the Israelites up to Jerusalem as they ascended to Jerusalem 3 times a year, or for us today, walking the pilgrimage of faith is difficult. The journey of faith walked with Christ does not mean that we will not have pain in our life, that we will not have hurt or depression or risk. The road traveled with God at our side can still be full of a lot of potholes. But one thing we are assured, especially in this psalm, is that the road traveled with God is 100% safe. So often it seems in our faith life, we feel or we think, we envision ourselves in our faith walking on a tightrope. And that our faith is like this tightrope that we're constantly kind of like falling off of or falling from side to side. And that it's even God who's trying to distract us. It's God who's kind of throwing things at us or constantly tempting us to fall off, to backslide, to kind of turn around or to lose our balance. And I don't quite know how we got that idea of God or that idea of faith. Because what we see actually in the Bible, the biblical imagery of this pathway with God, this pathway of our faith, especially in the prophets, is that of a highway, of a secure and safe highway. As Isaiah says, where the valleys will be lifted up and the mountains will be brought low, so that it'll be this long, wide, safe highway. And the imagery that our psalmist is using here is the imagery of the city and the fortress of Jerusalem, which was surrounded by mighty mountains. Ancient Jerusalem was one of the safest cities you could ever live in because it was naturally fortified by all these rock mountains that surrounded this city. This is the biblical imagery that the psalmist is trying to get us to adopt when we think of our pilgrimage of faith. That in God and in Christ, it is completely secure. Now, as I said, does this mean we won't have hardship? Well, no. And Eugene Peterson, again, outlines this within his commentary on the Psalms of Ascent. He says, whenever we read about the up and down history of Israel, we can still realize something solid and steady in it, that they are always God's people. God is steadfastly with them in mercy and justice, incessantly gracious. We get the feeling that everything is done in the sure and certain environment of the God who redeems his people. And as we learn that, we learn not to live by our feelings about God, but to learn to live by the facts of God. I refuse to believe my depression. I choose instead to believe in God. My feelings are important for many things. They are essential and valuable to life. They keep me aware of much that is true and real. But they tell me next to nothing about God or my relationship to him. My security comes from who God is, not how I feel. Discipleship is a decision to live by what I know about God, not by what I feel about him or myself or my neighbor. He goes on. The psalmist knows what sickness and death, despair and persecution are. He is familiar with the rape and pillage of military invasions and the famine and earthquakes of natural disaster. Psalm 25 was written by a person who did not have the anesthetics in the hospital or aspirin in his medicine cabinet, whose government did not have, his government did not have hundreds of billions of dollars to spend on national defense. Pain and suffering were most certainly part of his daily life. Why did they not destroy then his confidence? Well, it's because of what he writes in verse 3 of this psalm, where he says, "The scepter of the wicked will not remain." We go through trials and we go through difficulties, but these are not our eternal reality. They are things we feel right now. They are pains we experience. But through all of that, our future rests secure in Christ. Again, Peterson writes, says, "Evil is always temporary. The worst will not last. Nothing counter to God's justice has any eternity to it." Friends, we're not walking on a tightrope of faith. God is not trying to tempt us to fall off that tightrope or off any path or journey that we are traveling. But when we live by faith, we are like a people living in a secured fortress. And the only thing that is forever is God's faithfulness to us. Conclude with these words. All the persons of faith I know are sinners, doubters, and uneven performers. We are secure not because we are sure of ourselves, but because we trust that God is sure of us. The opening phrase of this psalm, "those who trust in the Lord." It is not those who trust in their own performance, in their own morals, in their own righteousness, in their own health, in their own pastor or doctor or president or economy or nation, but it says those who trust in the Lord. Those who decide that God is for us and will make us whole eternity. Friends, our pilgrim journey takes place on a secure highway of faith, because it is God's faithfulness to us that always journeys with us.